The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
This is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Montgomery Mosaic features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Here now is your host, Deborah Milo.
Good morning, Montgomery County, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Montgomery Mosaic. I hope you're having a great day. County friends, let me ask you, how often do you volunteer within your community? Do you participate in civic engagement? Are you passionate about the things that take place within your community, or you want to help create positive change? Well, today's guest is going to talk about just that, and also about an organization called Our Voices Matter Maryland. My guest today is Sterling Crockett, Executive Director of Our Voices Matter Maryland, and the mission is to develop leaders who will inspire civic engagement in underrepresented communities. Sterling, welcome. You know, it's really good to see you again.
It's great to see you again as well, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share my views and introduce your listeners to Our Voices Matter Maryland.
You know, you've been really busy since the March 24th website for Our Voices Matter Maryland, so I appreciate you taking the time to come on today's show. Let's begin by talking a bit about what inspired you to focus on community leadership. In other words, talk a little bit about and share your story.
Yes, you know, I'm a product of a community that had challenges but got a lot of things right. And I'm drawn to this work because I grew up in a small blue-collar community. My parents were factory workers. They did not have the opportunity to go to college, but as a result of their guidance and others in the community, I was able to get a college education, which led to a very promising career in business. And so I'm north of 50, and people tell me when you get there, you begin to turn your attention to legacy and so forth. But no, in all honesty, I'm just at a stage where I feel like I've, gained some very valuable insight and learned some very powerful lessons along the way, and I'd like to play those forward.
North of 50. I got to use that. I've got to use it. Never heard that before, so that's very unique. So what exactly is civic engagement, and why is it so important to the African American community as well as to other communities?
Great question. At Our Voices Matter, I mean, we've adopted a definition of civic engagement as being a community coming together as a collective source of change, both political and non-political. Further, it's the right of people to define the public good, define the policies used to seek that good, and to reform and replace institutions that do not serve that good. So, in my opinion, historically, there's been a lot of focus placed on the political, and in a lot of ways, we've neglected the non-political, and as a result, a lot of residents of socioeconomically challenged communities, live with a sense of hopelessness. They don't believe that they can impact the standard of living or the conditions and so forth in their communities.
Very true.
And we want to, begin to reshape that belief. And we believe that by engaging, very respectfully with the community, come with some ideas, but be open to what you learn, that we will discover some things that we can act upon, that would be part of that process of defining that public good, and then the residents will have a role in playing in the pursuit, and so it's a more empowering, endeavor.
Right. So Our Voices Matter Maryland. We always like to talk about how, a bunch of us were sitting at the kitchen table and we were talking about things, that needed to impact change. How was Our Voices Matter Maryland actually born?
Right. Well, it wasn't quite that way, but
no kitchen table experience.
No kitchen table experience, but a good friend and colleague, Will Jawando, and I were having a conversation and sharing views and experiences and so forth, and Will, like I, kind of beat the odds.
Yeah.
And along the way, you ask yourself the question, well, why did things turn out for me the way that they did? And what about my friend back in the community who had just as much talent and so forth as I did? Why didn't things go better for them? And it was, through that initial conversation and a series of conversations that Will shared his idea for Our Voices Matter. And I really bought into the potential to have a transformational impact, and also to bring an entrepreneur's, kind of mentality, a small business person's mentality,
Right.
To this area. And what I mean by that is, being results, oriented.
I know exactly what you mean. You've tuned into Montgomery Mosaic, and I'm your host, Deborah Milo. Today's topic is civic engagement, and my guest is Sterling Crockett, Executive Director of Our Voices Matter Maryland, and we were actually talking about how Our Voices Matter Maryland was born. So, Sterling, do you believe that civic engagement can affect change on a large scale? And, what kind of changes?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the primary reasons that I've engaged, with this work. I think one of the first steps in giving these individual community members a sense that they can impact their current conditions goes a long way. And what happens is you get buy-in. People when they're approached in that way tend to feel like they're part of the solution, or they're part of the initiative
Right.
that's being rolled out to impact their lives. And so therefore they're going to view it somewhat differently. I think, I grew up as I shared before, in a rural community and farming, and I know about farming and so forth. And so I think about it in terms of, if you were going to cultivate a plant, so to speak,
Right.
what would you focus on? You would focus on the environment.
Right.
Am I getting the water? Am I getting the necessary sunlight? Does the soil have the necessary nutrients? And if all of those things are present, the plant takes care of itself.
It thrives.
It thrives. Unfortunately, sometimes, and the initiatives are well-meaning, when we approach communities, we approach them more like weeds, something to deal, something
Right.
to be dealt with. And therefore, I think our policies and initiatives fall well short of their mark. And I think in a lot of ways, we're seeing the results of that today.
I think we are too, and that attitude, I think, permeates throughout the communities and throughout the policies that are supposed to be set forth to help.
Right.
Doesn't always work that way.
No, it doesn't.
So how important do you think civic engagement is to an individual's success?
Well, I think it's very important to individual success, because if we have community success, as a result, we'll have the individual success. And if I was as an individual, it kind of works hand in hand. I mean, you have goals and objectives that you want to achieve personally, but again, you have to have that environment,
Oh, yes.
present to you and available to you to do such. So, how do you get there? You get there by engaging. You get there by engaging with, I should say, other members of your community and speaking with what I said before, that collective voice to bring about those conditions necessary for you to be successful.
So do you think it helps develop and shape leadership in individuals, especially young people?
I absolutely believe that it does, and that's one of the things that we do, through our community forums, to go into communities, start a conversation, and while we have that conversation, identify these potential, leaders, bring about, some training and so forth, so they can be effective on behalf of their communities. It's a very critical component to what we do.
Talk a little more about the community forums. This is a new piece of this. I haven't had a chance to hear about this.
Right. Well, we believe through these community forums, through a series of community forums, we will learn what the real issues are, that are impacting the community. Like I said before, I've been a part of a lot of very, very well-meaning efforts where we look at results and then we say, okay, well, this is what's going on, and if we do this, this will be the response.
Yes.
And a lot of times those initiatives fall well short of their mark because there's something critical in the community that we have not considered. Mm-hmm. And so the only way to avoid that scenario and learn is to engage with the community, and we do it through a series of community forums. And these forums will be advertised. We go door to door, letting individual community members know that we're going to be there. We understand that there are other issues that get in the way, work. One of the big ones is child care can keep some from participating. So we provide child care at the professional child care at the event. But again, it's very, very critical to hear directly from the community, consider in a very respectful manner what you learn, and build those things into the solution. And again, I think it's one way to ensure buy-in on the part of the community.
I have to agree with you there. County friends, this is Deborah Milo on Montgomery Mosaic. Just sitting here chatting with Sterling Crockett he's the executive director of Our Voices Matter Maryland, and we're having a really good discussion about what Our Voices Maryland really does. And right now we're talking about the type of outreach that the organization does. Sterling, what other kinds of outreach methods does the organization plan to do?
Okay. One of the things that we are in discussions with now is one of a local church. And what we want to, we're going to planning to engage and have a mock trial, the Freddie Gray incident, and there would be a judge and two attorneys and so forth, and then at the end there would be this opportunity to ask and have questions answered. We feel that this type of activity is important because it helps residents to understand
absolutely
the process and what's taking place and so forth, and how it impacts them. And then one of the other things that we're focused on is collaboration with other groups.
That's so important.
Right. And so we engage with them and their events and so forth. The idea being, Denver, is a lot of the issues that impact these communities are interrelated.
That's right.
And you could be doing a really bang-up job in one area, but your ultimate results can be muted because something is happening in an area outside of where you're working. And so we see also Our Voices Matter as a bit of a convener, collaborator to, also have conversations that need to be had. We're focused on civic engagement. A lot of times we're not focused on running the mentoring program, but we have partners who do, and we bring them to the table important. If that's necessary. One of the things that I learned through my business endeavors is that you play to your strengths, and you hire and you partner and you collaborate to shore up your weaknesses, and that's our approach.
And see, that's what's so important. We see more young people becoming engaged in the rallies and the marches, basically due to a variety of factors. Racial tension, unfortunately. So when we come back, we're going to talk about why it's important for young people to become civic-minded and engage in their community, even if there is no set issue to spur them on. So, Sterling, when we come back, I want to talk about that and talk about the work of Our Voices Matter. Folks, we'll be back in just a moment, so by all means, stay tuned.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
Good morning. This WOL Traffic Update is brought to you by Jiffy Lube, 295 southbound, slowing from Burroughs Avenue to East Capitol Street. Outer loop of the Beltway still have the cleanup of the overturned tractor trailer in the left lane. The tractor trailer is uprighted, but still have the left lane closed. Delays from Route 5 on the outer loop heading north on 95 and 495. Reno Road at 37th Street Northwest. It was a tree down in the roadway. Have you discovered the value of Jiffy Lube Signature Service oil change? The JiffyLubeDC.com website will give you the details. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by the Foundation for a Better Life. For today, sunny, high near 90, clear overnight down to 70. Tomorrow, a sunny day and a high near 94. Winston Churchill's words stirred his country in the face of defeat. Today they inspire us to reach for our own victories. Commitment, pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com. Steve Hirshhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
County friends, it's Deborah Milo with Montgomery Mosaic. Welcome back, and I do hope you're having a fantastic day. I have the privilege of talking with Sterling Crockett from the organization Our Voices Matter, where he's the executive director. Our Voices Matter Maryland, and we're having a really good discussion about what the organization does. And before we went to break, we talked a little bit about how young people were becoming more engaged in some of the more civic-minded type of activities, rallies, marches, But it's unfortunately due to a variety of factors that seem to be elevated within our community based on racial tension. And Sterling was about to tell us about why it's important for young people to become civic-minded and engage in their community, not just because there is a set issue to spur them on, but in general. Sterling?
Thanks, Deborah. Well, this is one that I've given a bit of thought to because, the incidents that we are seeing play out now are not the first. I mean, we've
That's
seen
right.
some of this stuff before. And I recognize a pattern, on the part of blacks. And it's this, during let's call it the protest phase.
Yeah.
We expend a lot of energy. We're out there. We're highlighting, what's wrong, what's negatively impacting us, how unfair it is, and I agree with all of that. But what we've done historically is that we spent all our energy in that phase, and we haven't left energy and resources for the work to come. And if I think about it in terms of the work that I'm doing right now through Our Voices Matter, I would say the voices don't matter if nothing happens.
If nothing happens.
And nothing will happen unless there's this sustained effort, beginning with what I mentioned earlier about defining what the public good is, defining,
right.
What you want your community, to be. And it's very important for young people to stay engaged beyond this phase, be part of the organization, be part of that effort to bring, the resources and so forth to your community that are necessary. And then that way you feel that you have a degree of ownership. Now you have a stake in the game. Again, you're creating something versus someone else creating something for you and saying, here,
That's
make
right.
that work.
And you're not reacting to a situation. You're giving yourself an opportunity to really look at the big picture, the whole landscape, and how you can create, I would even say, a legacy of action in the future.
Right. Success breeds success.
Absolutely. You and I were talking earlier and a couple of months ago as well. And, it's amazing because we both have been engaged, at the community level, mostly all of our lives. And, throughout the years, the African American Church has played a major role in civic engagement. And, it's actually the first place I think that many of us learn the importance of being involved in our communities. So do you think that the black church is as relevant today in supporting these kinds of efforts as it was in the past?
Well, I think we've definitely had a bit of a lull where
Yeah.
where that leadership has
Yeah.
not been there, but I am encouraged. Recently I've seen some very good examples where the church is making its way back into the conversation. I think it's real, community leadership on the part of, say, Reed Temple to partner with Our Voices Matter to have a public conversation, about the Gray, incident
Right.
and so forth. And, over the last few decades, I mean, we all, as individuals, as institutions, I mean, we've gotten off track a little bit. But now I sense a civil environment where we can have a honest and open dialogue with one another and collectively, plan for the change that we'd like to see.
And see, those changes that we want to see, talk a little bit about more as far as the collective is concerned with some of your partners that you see happening within Our Voices Matter Maryland.
Well, some of our issues are achievement gap. We think that that's a huge issue. There's issues of financial literacy and economic development. One of a very pressing issue because the war on drugs and incarceration and the number of black men in general that's available to be mentors. Being a mentor, for a young man or woman is huge. And so, sensing this and again, playing to our strengths, we have partnered with a number of organizations, Pride Youth Services, that's very involved in the Montgomery County Public Schools and is focused on health and wellness.
Right.
300 Rising and Man Up that are focused on mentoring and those issues. And then we're also collaborating with the NAACP Parents Council as well as the Montgomery County Collaborative Council. And we, while it's not formal, we refer to ourselves as the Youth Voices for Change Coalition.
Youth Voices for Change Coalition. I like the title. I like the title. Speaking of, men and women getting engaged, with the community, we talk about and read about so many unsung heroes or sheroes that worked behind the scenes during the struggle for civil rights. So whereas before, you really didn't know about them because they were in the shadows. So how important is it for the black woman to become involved in civic engagement?
Oh, it's extremely important. I've had a lot of success, collaborating with and partnering in business and in other areas, with women. And, women have a stake in this game as well. When me and my partners in the Youth Voices for Change Coalition, and we were having before our relationship began to become formal, we would meet periodically and discuss issues that were going on. And in the early phases of our conversations, those conversations centered around the plight of black boys.
Right.
And then along the way, we learned that, wow, in some ways, black girls are just having as hard or an even harder time.
Oh, yes.
And so if you don't have, those voices, again, if change and policy and so forth is being planned for and orchestrated, well, you want to be at the table, with your instrument,
you
as
better
well.
Believe it.
And so I just believe that nobody can portray your issues or share your life experience better than you can. And
I agree.
That's why you have to have that firsthand, voice, so to speak, at the table.
This is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, and I'm your host, Deborah Milo, talking with Sterling Crockett, Executive Director of Our Voices Matter Maryland. Speaking of civic engagement, I just want to do a plug here to let you know about the annual Health Freedom Walk sponsored by the county's Department of Health and Human Services. The walk is an innovative project which will promote physical activity while highlighting the role of the Underground Railroad. The walk is going to be held on Saturday, June 13th at the Matthew Henson Park, but you can get more information by visiting the website www.onehealthylife.org, www.onehealthylife.org, or you can call the African American Health Program at 240-777-0397. Begin your journey to wellness today. So that means, Sterling, I will see you out there on Saturday, right?
Absolutely.
So getting back to our discussion at hand, how should the African American community strengthen its efforts to become part of the larger social fabric for change? Leadership, voter registration, and I know that's a broad question, but let's narrow the vision a little bit. So what do you think?
Well, you said narrow, but
right.
I say all the above.
You're right.
It's going to take all the above and working in concert, to bring about the change that we must see. Now, I don't want to pick on politics or our politicians and that whole process. But
right.
We both know that it's extremely important. It's received a lot of attention, and it's something that, there's always room of improving, but I don't think the black community has done as bad a job as portrayed sometimes, because I go out into the community and I see a lot of black political leaders. Mm-hmm. So really what's taking place, I believe, and I hope this is not too controversial, but it's not enough to put someone into office.
Right.
You have to let them know what you want them to do.
And that's the community's responsibility.
And that's the community's responsibility. Being that collective, remember I said, having that voice in defining the common good in your community, and having the voice in the resources and what they will be applied to, to bring about that, that common good.
So essentially the voices don't matter if nothing happens.
If nothing happens, exactly.
So tell me something. How do you think civic engagement needs to change in order to keep it fresh?
Well, I think we're on our way to doing that at Our Voices Matter, because we're considering the political as well as the non-political.
And
it's a holistic definition, and we want to attack it, at all levels. We will have our focus on civic engagement and convening the conversation and helping to define the ideas, but we're on the ready with our partners and collaborators, to do the actual work.
So can you share, is there a website that citizens can visit to get more information about Our Voices Matter Maryland?
Yes. You can visit our website at www.ourvoicesmattermd.org.
Okay, would you mind repeating that?
Yes, www.ourvoicesmattermd.org.
So before we wrap up, I want you, Sterling, to share some words of wisdom, some pearls, if you will, about how important it is for all of us to become more involved in civic engagement.
Well, I think...
Don't you love it when I come up with those questions?
Right. But no. I think, if I could just, make it very succinct, I think the people get the government and the community that they deserve. And if a change is to be brought about, we must bring, about that change.
I have to agree with you. And like you said originally, the voices don't matter if nothing happens, Well, Sterling, you know what? It's always good to see you. Something tells me I'm going to see you out in the community here real soon, too.
I hope so.
And
got a lot of work to do.
That's right. I do expect to see you on Saturday, and you tell Will I said the same thing.
I will.
Too.
I will.
Well, County friends, that's our show for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Sterling Crockett, Executive Director of Our Voices Matter Maryland. And thank you, as always, for sharing some of your time with us today. Now, don't forget about the Health Freedom Walk this coming Saturday. I hope to see you there. Tune in again on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month for another edition of Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL WPRS HD2 and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. And remember, County friends, get involved and make a difference in your community. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Montgomery Mosaic, featuring topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. For more information or a copy of the show, email public information at montgomerymd.gov or call 240-777-6507. Be sure to tune in at this time on the second and fourth Wednesday every month for Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com.